First of all, I realize this is probably not how you thought the story would start. Not with a big, shiny moon, or a city that could look stunning in spite of itself. Or me.
I've recently come around on the idea of adaptations rewriting their source material. Traditionally, in an adaptation, I expect that the hallmarks of the original be replicated as closely as possible, with changes made where necessary due to the limitations of the new medium. Though it still frustrates me to no end when All-Star Superman misquotes Grant Morrison without reason.
And I only have one chance to save the world.
That's all you've ever needed.
There is certainly a novelty to hearing or seeing your favorite moments acted out, but I now think it is more interesting for adaptations to retell the original with new plot and dialogue and thereby offer a fresh take. After all, if it turns out poorly, at least you've still got the comic book. However, this should not be confused with a blank check on creative license. The original material is to be respected, and any changes must be meaningful and deliberate. Unfortunately, DC's The Killing Joke fails to meet this standard spectacularly, managing to simultaneously retell the original story verbatim, while also tacking on an unrelated side adventure which could be mistaken for progressive fanfiction.
I need space! Hey!
There. Space.
From its opening narration, The Killing Joke is painfully aware of the debate surrounding its existence. A new villain appears who Batman claims is objectifying Batgirl, and various other scenarios are created for Batgirl to exercise her newfound agency. However, these changes are almost completely restricted to the first half of the film, and are brushed aside once the Killing Joke part of the film actually begins. Barbara Gordon's opening narration is never completed, and the scene embedded in the credits only serves to undermine the ambiguity of the original ending. The film is also hurt by its self-awareness. Instead of focusing upon telling its story, it is preoccupied with appeasing its critics. As such, it achieves neither of these goals entirely. A bizarre sex scene between the Batgirl and the Batman is this film's most questionable decision, and a plot beat certainly not alluded to by this source material. To me, at least, it is unclear how adding this new sexual dimension justifies the crippling of Batgirl. Instead, it seems to set up the classic horror film adage of punishing the impure female for her impropriety. In fact, the sexualization of these characters feels odd across the board. Barbara Gordon acts brashly and emotionally in contrast with her usual analytical personality, a plot beat which seems unfortunately tied to her sexual encounter with Batman.
It was just sex, for God's sake. It doesn't have to mean anything. It's not like we have to care. I don't care. You don't care. We just go back like it was. That's all.
Meanwhile, the very notion that Batman even has sexual desires is outright bizarre. While Bruce Wayne has had various dalliances throughout his career, Batman's desires have always been fixated upon his crusade, the only notable exception being Frank Miller's goddamn all-star Batman, which is better left unmentioned. For the Joker's part, sex also feels out of place, the Joker being a famously asexual figure who, like Batman, focuses all of his energy upon his work, much to the ire of one Harley Quinn.
Don't you want to rev up your Harley? Vroom, vroom.
One new scene even suggests that the Joker had actually raped Barbara and done so for pleasure.
So why do you think he hasn't been to visit?
I don't know. Maybe he found himself another girl.
This is simply irreconcilable with Moore's Joker and the Joker as he more broadly appears in the lore. What's more, these changes, supposedly calculated to repair the story, seem to only stoke the flames of the outraged liberal audiences which now have more ammunition to hurl than before, where the extent of the sexual violation was unclear. Why DC sought to wade further into this argument rather than minimize it with its original ambiguity is anyone's guess. Overall, the first half of this film is completely extraneous to the real story, and may be disregarded as a footnote. For better or worse, The Killing Joke was never a Batgirl story. Attempting to make it into one is tantamount to completely rewriting it. The rest of the film is copied all but shot for shot from the comic book. Whether or not you find the film as impactful as the graphic novel is a matter of personal opinion. However, it is possible to salvage the entire original story. And what could I possibly say about The Killing Joke that hasn't already been said? Now, I'm not in the camp of haters who despise The Killing Joke for any number of anti-intellectual reasons. I'm more than willing to give it the nod it deserves as a very important graphic novel which thoroughly captivated me when I first read it. And in the story's defense, what makes it important and enduring is not the crippling of Barbara Gordon, but the story's imagining of its villain as a complex individual with a tragic history. It's the sort of writing people struggle to replicate to this day. Frankly, the fact that Alan Moore has had his name removed from the story doesn't mean we are all obliged to disregard its existence. Indeed, to do so is bad criticism, and there is a hell of a lot of it going around at the moment. However, it is also true that this is not the best version of The Killing Joke. That honor still belongs to the Anniversary Edition, if only because I have never read a copy of the original. It's worth noting that some of the animation is choppy and inconsistent, and I might be the only one who thinks this, but I also felt Mark Hamill's performance was a little flat. There's been a version of the ending monologue floating around YouTube for years, and I'll be damned if it isn't the superior version. Just listen to this comparison.
Something like that, I know. Because something like that happened to me. If I'm going to have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice.
Something like that. Something like that happened to me, you know. I'm not exactly sure what it was.
To my ear, the fan version is far more nuanced and manic than the comparably flat delivery in the film. I love the way that it manages to convey epiphany when he says, "happened to me," which is central to making the Joker sympathetic before the final crescendo. But maybe that's just me. To wrap up, The Killing Joke 2016 is not the film I wanted, but, it's okay.
God damn it.